Hi, I'm Lynn Gray, Chair of the Hillsborough County School Board. I want to welcome you to Hillsborough County Public Schools. We serve more than 200,000 students. That includes children in preschool through our adults in our workforce program.
Hi, I'm Dr. Stacy Hahn, the Board Vice Chair. Our district is the 7th largest in America, and our team is made up of more than 24,000 people working at nearly 250 sites across the county.
We are diverse and dedicated. Our board meetings are held in our board auditorium on select Tuesdays at 4 p.m. The best way to serve our students and our community is to involve you, the public, in what we do.
You are welcome to email or meet with any of our board members and follow our district on social media. Board meetings are covered live by Hillsborough Schools TV on Spectrum Cable Channel 635 and Frontier Cable Channel 32.
Meetings are streamed on our website at hillsboroughschools.org. Closed captioning is provided on all broadcasts, and past meetings are available in our online archives.
We are interested in what the public has to say. We'll include time for audience comments before we address our business items. Our agenda and any supporting materials can be viewed online in advance. They're posted 7 days before each meeting on our website at hillsboroughschools.org.
Our vision is preparing students for life, and that means all students, every day. Todos los estudiantes, todos los días. Thank you for your interest in education. With your help, we're making decisions that shape our community's future.
Good morning. It seems like we are melting into morning, afternoon, and evening sessions lately. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Board, for your astuteness. We do have two board members. Mr. Porter, which board members are on the teams?
Member Combs and Member Vaughn are participating through teams, and they've been invited, and I think Pablo is checking to make sure they're going to be on.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll.
In the meantime, you have a quorum, and you can start the meeting.
Yeah, and I'll have Member Hahn, my illustrious co-chair, help with their comments if they want to make any, etc. Board members, this should be a brief meeting, briefer than the past one. The goal today is actually twofold, to vote on the Finance Advisory Committee. Mr. Porter is going to lead the charge, and we'll come up with a way of consensus so we can actually take a vote. And then hopefully that will be no longer than an hour, perhaps even shorter than that. We have one public speaker, Mr. Rick Warner. And then secondly, we're going to dive into part 2 of the Code of Conduct, and Ms. Bays will lead that. I know, board members, you prepared questions. So, and then, of course, on the aside, Superintendent Davis, can you just give a quick announcement about the Principal's Busch Gardens situation happening today?
Yes, ma'am. Today, just an opportunity for cabinet to interact with our principals and have for them to be able to get to have a better understanding of who our cabinet members are, what they do, how we build relationships, what the overarching needs are for moving forward to the 21-22 school year, and then just get a chance to let our hair down together. So, they've worked so hard. They've been heroic during this time, so get a chance to have some synergy. And we're grateful for sponsorships in this process and just time together with our colleagues.
Excellent. Thank you. Member Hahn wants to go ahead. Member Hahn, do you have a question? Oh, okay. So we're going to go ahead. Mr. Porter, you're on, and give us all the information that you have so we can decide.
We could do public comment first if you like.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Mr. Warner, would you come up and share? We have 3 minutes for you.
Did you do a moment of silence, Pledge of Allegiance, adopt the agenda?
Mr. Warner, can you just keep standing? We're going to go ahead and first, Member Hahn, would you mind doing a moment of silence and then a pledge? Thanks.
Bow your head in a moment of silence. Dear Lord, please bless this board. Give us the strength and the wisdom to make the best decisions for our students, families, and overall community that we represent. Amen.
And we'll now rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Member Snively.
Need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So we need a motion to adopt the agenda. I have a motion by Member Washington and a second by Member Snively. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote when your lights are on. And with two, well, only Member Vaughn did not vote and Member Combs because they're on teams. So do we know if
Member
they're...
Vaughn, could you raise your hand if you're in favor of adopting the agenda? So the motion carries 6-1.
Very good. Okay, the motion carries 6-1. Yeah, so
I think you can probably just go right into public comment. I mean, this should be pretty straightforward. So.
okay, we do have a public comment today, an opportunity for the public, of course, to vet their interest. The interest today is specifically with the Finance Advisory Committee. Mr. Warner, would you do us the pleasure? Thank you. 3 minutes.
Good morning, board members, Superintendent Davis. Forming this committee, there are a lot of alternatives on how it can be done. One of the difficult decisions is balancing the size of the committee with a desire to include the many stakeholder groups that this district has. And I wanted to be sure the board was aware of a recent change, which has really not been published yet, in the legislative platform of the State League of Women Voters, which changes their general language about working for more funding to two very specific requests. One, to accomplish equity in capital improvement funding, which Hillsborough is the largest sufferer from the inequity in capital improvement funding and the millage rates because of our relationship between property values and student population. And the second change that the League of Women Voters has made statewide is to reach for the midpoint, at least among the states in total per pupil funding. And as you all know by now, we're 44th. So I think those specifics are a great thing to see in legislative platforms. I hope to see it in this body's legislative platform. Full disclosure, I am a member of the League of Women Voters, and I am pushing for them to be one of the organizations included with the right to select a member of this committee. One last comment is that I think clearly the majority of these committee members should have a financial background, but not necessarily everybody, because other perspectives are important also. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick Warner. And at this point in time, we're going to go ahead and have the meeting, this part of the meeting, led by Mr. Porter, our attorney. Thank you, Mr. Porter, for preparing materials. Board members, you have in your possession a folder which has all the relevant materials that Mr. Porter will be going over. And Mr. Porter, thank you.
Thank you, board members. As you recall, this board voted a while back to establish a financial advisory committee with the idea that the purpose and the scope and the membership will be decided at a later date, and the later date is now. So that's what we're here for. You have before you a draft that represents comments from board members, from staff, from other school districts, elements from our Citizens Advisory Committee and our Financial Oversight Committee for the surtax. This is your board. It's your creation, and it can take any shape and any form and any purpose that you want it to. But for purposes of today's meeting, this is something to react to. So what I want to do is go through first the purpose of this committee, then the scope of responsibility, and then the membership. And the membership will probably take the most debate, but again, this is your committee, and we want it to reflect what your wishes are on it. So I'm going to, you have it in front of you, but I'll read the purpose so that everyone's on the same page. The Financial Advisory Committee's purpose is to provide an additional tool for the school board in finding solutions to the fiscal operation deficit, to restore confidence and trust in the financial stewardship of the district and the board, to provide more transparency in the financial and budget process, and to provide guidance to the board. The Financial Advisory Committee shall not have the power to make financial or budgetary decisions for the school board or the district, but rather will provide input, perspective, recommendations to the school board. The school board shall receive the information and recommendations provided by the Financial Advisory Committee, but the school board is not required to act upon the information or recommendation. That's the general purpose, and I think that captures the essence of what you all were trying to accomplish. But if you have comments about it, let me know and we can edit it as appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Do the board members, Member Combs,
They're going to
Member
text
Vaughn
me if
have
they
a...
want to speak. So Ms. Vaughn has a comment.
Okay, Member Vaughn?
Thank you very much. You guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for preparing this, Mr. Porter. The only comment that I have right now is in looking at the structure, and you and I have discussed this, the superintendent does have 2 appointees, and I would agree with Mr. Warner. I would prefer more community engagement and to bring more people to the table, because I feel like this is an oversight committee, so we can have more eyes on our budget, more people from the community, so that they can, trust that we're making wise decisions and understand our funding. So I would like to see, all of the board members and the superintendent have 1 appointee, and along the lines of our speaker, Mr. Warner, allow that 2nd appointee to go to the League of Women Voters.
And Ms. Vaughn, thank you for the input. If I could ask the board members if we could focus on one section at a time. And so right now,
sorry.
No, I appreciate your comments, and you had provided those to me previously, and we'll get back to that. But right now, we're just talking about the purpose, and if there are no, I want to make sure as we go through this that there's buy-in on each of these sections, and then when we get to the membership, I think that's probably going to generate a little bit more debate. So if there are no comments on the purpose, we can move on.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, I think Mr. Porter wants to go over the scope of responsibility and then the board choice of membership. So, Mr. Porter, are you completed with the purpose?
If you have comments about the purpose, we'll move on to scope, which is on the
Okay.
2nd page.
All right.
So this is the scope of responsibility, and that's important to give direction when you create a board so that they understand what their role is and what their responsibilities are and what their powers are. So the Financial Advisory Committee shall have the following powers and duties. Number 1, prepare for, attend, and actively participate in committee meetings. Number 2, review and analyze the budget for the district. Number 3, review and analyze monthly budget amendments. Number 4, review and analyze budget policies, review and analyze board policies related to the budget. Number 5, provide input, advice, and support in the preparation of the operating and capital budget for the district. Number 6, provide input, advice, and support in the maintenance of the unassigned fund balance reserve and the general fund reserve. And number 7, report to the school board at least 8 times a year. Those are the recommended scope of responsibilities, and if there are any board comments on that, now would be the time to make them.
Okay, board members, did you want to have a comment on that particular subject, which is revolving around scope of responsibility? Member Snively?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Will there be an attendance requirement? Did I miss that in here? 8, a minimum of 8, or?
A minimum of 8 reporting to the board. So they would report to you at a board meeting at least 8 times a year.
Okay, so, and so there would be...
Just like the Citizens Advisory Committee or the Financial Oversight Committee make reports to the board on a periodic basis.
Right.
recommended that this group would do the same thing at a board meeting.
So it would be, okay, so they would come to the board meeting and make a presentation.
Their chair would come to the board meeting and present.
Similar to how,
Yes.
yes, okay, but more frequently.
So I had originally suggested quarterly reports, and one of the comments I got from a board member was it needed to be more often. And instead of doing a monthly, I
Every other
selected
month.
8 times a year, or at least 8 times a year. But that's up to you all to talk about.
And how many meetings there,
They're going to meet monthly.
every month? Okay,
proposal is they meet
will there be an attendance requirement for
There
this?
is not one now, and if you want to put that in there, when we get to the membership, we can talk about
Okay,
that.
and then how will we prepare them for the review and analyzation of the budget? Like, do we, I mean, is there some training, some professional development to
Staff of
prepare
the,
them?
The chief financial officer will be the primary liaison to the committee, and just like when you had the financial committee last year, they would service the committee and provide them the information and training that would be needed.
Perhaps a workshop or a couple of sessions
Sure.
that would prepare them for how to read, because even though, we may have some folks with financial backgrounds, certified professional accountants and so forth, a school budget for this municipality is very different type of budget. And so I'm just wanting to make sure that they understand how to read a school budget versus a regular budget. So, okay, those were my 2 questions so far. Thank you.
Member Snively, are you suggesting perhaps professional development, or are you envisioning workshops?
Well, just as we have professional development from the Florida School Board Association when we become new school board members, Finance 101, if you will, perhaps we can offer something to them, maybe obviously not as much in length, because those are 2-day workshops for each session that we get from the Florida School Board Association. We get four full days of how to read a budget. So I'm going to suggest that we have something to prepare them for how to read a school budget and how FEFP works, and all of the intricacies that are associated with this very large $3 billion budget.
Good point.
Thank you.
Excellent point. And I'm taking notes too. Superintendent Davis will make note of that as well. That's a very important suggestion. I only wanted to throw in, now that we mentioned that Ms. Johnson will be part of the analyzing and reviewing board policies. What further role would our CFO have in this?
She's identified in the membership part as the district liaison for the committee and would attend all the meetings and support the committee.
Okay, thank you. Member Perez, followed by Member Hahn.
Just for sake of closing the circle, so they would come to the meeting, share their concerns, and then their the follow-up would be provided to our chair.
Well, so they will meet monthly, and they will go over what the scope of responsibilities dictates that they cover, and then they'll make monthly reports to you on whatever their findings are, whether it's on the budget or maybe a proposed board policy, and that will be up to them to determine what they want to report to you, and then you all can take that information and do with it what you think most appropriate.
Member Perez, you're all finished. Thank you. Member Hahn?
So you said monthly just now, but in here it says 8 times.
2 separate things. They're going to meet monthly. They're going to report to you at least 8 times a year.
Okay, so at their monthly meetings, they're just going to have a conversation and then put a report together that will.
Well, they'll do, I think the monthly meetings, they'll do the things that are in the scope of responsibility. They might focus on the fund balance of one meeting. They might focus on taking a look at existing board policies related to finances. And then what they choose to report to you will be based on what they decide is important.
But it is in the sunshine, so we could always look at the minutes of the
Yes.
meeting. Okay. So I just wanted to say that, I concur with Member Snively in regard to PD. I actually had that written down. We need to make sure that they understand the school, not just the school budget and how it works, but how funds flow from the feds and the state. It's very complex, and as Member Snively said, even though you may have a finance degree or be a certified public accountant, school finance is very different, and so it will require, and I think that needs to be understood up front, that they are mandatory public professional development trainings that will take an extensive amount of time, And I also agree we need to address, I think though you said to do that during membership around attendance.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Hahn. Member Snively?
Thank you. I think reporting every other month to the board would probably be adequate. I'm just trying to think of how to prepare a person. If I approach them, I want to make sure they understand the scope of the time commitment, the responsibilities. So two things. One, I think we need to I would say reduce that to 6 times a year, making it every other month as opposed to 8. I don't know where the other 2 are going to fit in if they're reporting every other month logistically. I think that's adequate. And then perhaps if we could drill down on the how long the meetings are going, like if I tell someone they're going to meet once a month, how long are these meetings going to be? Is it an hour? Is it 2 hours? Is it 4 hours? I think we need to have some type of time limitation so that they know what time commitment that they're going to have participating in these monthly meetings.
I think I want to address your first point first. I anticipate only the chair of the committee reporting to the board, so it wouldn't be the whole committee coming to the board 8 times a year. It would just be whoever is elected chair coming. So I mean, I think that I can have them report to you as much as you like, or as your amount of times as you like.
I was just honestly logistically trying to think of what I guess maybe the summer months we would have more, because that's when we start formulating the budget proposals but I don't know.
And I think
where are we going to stick those extra 2 months?
And I think as far as the length of the committee meetings, I think that will be up to them. But if you want to set some sort of parameters on that, the board absolutely could do that. Maybe Mr. Farkas, could you identify the Financial Oversight Committee for the tax? How long are their meetings typically?
How long are
their committee meetings?
Usually within an hour. I mean, I know some of the board members have attended those, depending on the topics that go with it and that part of it too, but they're pretty succinct.
So we could build that into this if you think they should be an hour, and that would give people an idea of what the time commitment would be.
I think that would be beneficial to. I know they could probably, as a committee, decide that. But I'd like to go in with some expectations set to say, okay, if I think it's going to be an hour or 2 hours a month, and then it turns into a 4 or 5 hour commitment a month, and I just want to make sure we're careful around that. To be very upfront with our expectations of the time commitment. Thank you.
No, I agree. A lot of them do work, and I know at the Oversight Committee, definitely has a beginning and an end time commensurate with their work schedule. My quick question, real quick, and then Superintendent Davis, I see.
I think Ms. Vaughn.
Oh, okay. Member Vaughn will be next. Okay, I'm looking in five different directions here. Also, there's an avenue, and this is to Member Snively's comment, that we can report, as we should, on the suspended agenda, any updates, just to make sure that we're continually having updates, and not just us, but for the public to be apprised. This is a new ornament for us to have, and it's a great idea. It needs to be done for a long time. So let's, I'm just saying in terms of messaging and communication that maybe this can be incorporated. I'll let board members respond to that if they have a feeling on that. Member Vaughn, you are next on the queue. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much. In regards to how often the committee reports to the board, I would definitely like to keep it at 8. I think that, I was hoping for once a month since we meet consistently, but I know that we had talked about making it less just because our board meetings, we didn't commit to 2 meetings a month when we talked about going forward in case there was a holiday month or whatnot. We had spring break. So I think that's why it went down. But I think that, being on the MPO board, I see a lot of value in the presentations that our advisory committee gives us each month on our agenda. And it gives us a good consensus of what the community is thinking and feeling. If they, analyze our budget for 1 month and they have nothing to report, they can, say they have nothing to report that month. But I really think that it's important for this committee to, really analyze things and present it to us. And so that we have a very collaborative relationship is what I'm I'm hoping to see with this board. So, making it less is something that I think will limit the engagement between what they think is going on with the budget or ideas that they have or suggestions and our ability to kind of have that information prepared before we vote on agenda items. So, I would like to keep it at 8, and I would even like more, but I think that's where we kind of landed when we talked about it, Mr. Porter. Thank you.
Ms. Combs would like to be added to the queue.
Okay. Member Combs, hold on just for a second. I just wanted to delve into what Member Vaughn says. It seems like she would like more of a collaborative joining with board and this advisory. So I just want to make that distinction. There's not a consensus yet on that involvement. Member Combs?
Good morning, everybody. Maybe a good compromise would be 6 to 8 meetings, because we really don't know what it's going to look like once they come together. It may take a month or two to settle down, to get the information. Maybe a good compromise would be 6 to 8 meetings the first year, and then we could revisit and look at that and see. That gives a little bit more flexibility to a new committee. It's something brand new that we've never done, so that's just a suggestion.
Thank you, Member Combs, and I definitely agree. Board members, reevaluation after a year would certainly be indicative. Member Snively?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree as well. I like the flexibility of the 6 to 8, so I would agree with Member Combs and Member Gray. Since we were also mentioning training, I noticed that all of these meetings are subject to Florida Sunshine Law and public records, and so in addition to the training, the Finance 101 type training for reading a school budget, probably would also be a good idea to train them on Florida Sunshine and Public Records Law, because that is, and also set that expectation with the volunteers for this committee, especially if none of them have ever been subjected to Florida Sunshine or Public Law. It is it's extremely complex and can be a risk for some of our members who decide to volunteer. So I thought maybe that would be a good additional training for them as well. Thank you.
Excellent suggestion. Member Washington, did you want to speak at all yet? Okay, not yet. Okay, I just didn't want to meet. I see Member Vaughn's next. Okay, thank you. Member Vaughn?
Hi, yeah, thank you. I have a question. I was under the impression that they were meeting every month, and what I was talking about is how often they presented to the board. But from what I hear from Member Combs and maybe Member Snively, we're talking about how many meetings that they're going to have a month just to meet to go over stuff. So could you clarify that, or am I confused?
No, two separate things. The intent is that the committee will meet on a monthly basis. So they will meet monthly, and the suggestion has been that we limit that to approximately an hour per month, so that the committee members know what sort of time commitment they are committing themselves to. And then the 6 to 8 would be the chair of that committee reporting to the board. So the compromise that's been suggested is that that the committee report to the school board at least, which allows for more, 6 to 8 times a year. That's the suggested compromise at this point, Ms. Vaughn.
And then with the flexibility between 6 and 8, I mean, do we have to make more of a hard decision, or how does it work with 6 to 8? That's up to the committee itself's discretion, and then they vote on it, or
I think it would be up. I think at least 6 to 8 is about as flexible as you could possibly be, because at least suggests that there could be more, but there can't be less than 6. And I think it will be up to the committee to decide if they have things that they think are important enough to bring to the full board, or this board could also make a request that they want to hear from them more often. And I think, as Ms. Combs said, because it is a new committee, the first year would almost be like a pilot program to see how it works and what makes sense and what doesn't. And this document could always be changed or modified to reflect the reality or what works best for the committee and for the board.
So can I reiterate, we are just saying that it would have to be 6 to 8. However, if they wanted to do more, let's say each month they had a presentation they wanted to bring, or they wanted to give us feedback, that's up to their discretion, and they could present as much as they want.
Yes, and it also gives the board the flexibility to request them to come more often if there are things that you want to hear from them about.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you. I appreciate
Sure.
it.
Thank you, Member Vaughn. Excuse me, Member Washington, then Member Perez, and then Member Hahn.
That's 6 to 8, Jim. Would that be once a month, though? At least they would report to the board once a month?
Just 6 to 8 times a year. So
Okay.
they would meet once a month, like as a committee, and then they would make a report to you throughout throughout a year, at least 6 times or 8 times.
I would like to see a report probably once a month to keep us ahead and know exactly what's going on.
Okay?
Okay.
That's what they were talking. So there's some discussion about that then. So.
Oh, okay, good.
Thank you, Member Washington, and your voice has been heard, so appreciate that. Member Perez, and then Member Hahn.
Yeah, like the majority of the board members have stated, 6 to 8 is good because the first few meetings are going to be more organizational and then training. So by the time they really get to the meat of what they need to present to us, it's going to be a little bit further down the road. So 6 to 8 is going to be, the most appropriate for these board members to really get to us and give us some substantial information, to be honest.
Thank you, Member Perez. It looks like we're getting right in your consensus. Member Hahn?
Thank you, Member Gray. So yes, I appreciate the compromise from Member Snively and Member Combs. I agree with the at least 6 to 8. I think it offers the committee the flexibility, and I think that's respectful to give them some flexibility. We don't want to handcuff them, and so I would support the at least 6 to 8 times a year. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Hahn. It looks like that would be the consensus and also the reevaluation after a year. Having said that, I don't want to dispel Member Washington. Are you fine with what we just said in terms of the at least? Any objection?
Yes, none at all. I just need to know. We just need to know the report so we'll be on top of it each month and what's going on. Because if you wait too long, and then you lose all the perception of what concept what you should have.
Thank you, Member Vaughn. Will you be agreeable to saying, of course, the at least 6 to 8 meetings, but also the reeval after a year?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want our members to feel handcuffed, but I do want there to be clear expectations so people who sign up know what they're getting into, and so we have a really engaged board. But as long as it's at the committee, as long as it's at the committee's discretion, and if they want to present more because they have an item or several items that they want to go ahead and give some feedback on, I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, board members. We're going to move right now to the membership. Mr. Porter?
Yeah, so basically you have in front of you a proposed membership. And again, this is your board and it can take any direction that you want. I think, though, in reality, there are really 2 basic structures that you could use. The one I proposed has board member appointees, superintendent appointees, and then outside stakeholder appointees. And that's a membership of about 15. And that's getting a little bit heavy with membership. That's a lot of people. The other real option would be for you all to just appoint one and the superintendent appoint one and have a committee of 8. And I think you have to decide sort of fundamentally what you like. But if you want outside representation, what I'm proposing is this, and I'll go through the proposal, and then you all can react to it. Each school board member shall appoint 1 person. The superintendent shall appoint 2 people. I chose 2 people because I wanted an odd number of a committee, and this would add up to 15. You could easily have the superintendent appoint 1. That's just for discussion purposes. The Hillsborough County Classroom Teachers Association would appoint 1 person. The Hillsborough Association of School Administrators, HASA, would appoint 1 person. The Hillsborough County Parent Teachers Association would appoint 1 person. A student would be selected in the format that is used to select a student for the Citizens Advisory Committee. Mr. Ayers provided that language to me. The Hillsborough chapter of the NAACP would appoint a person, and the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC, would appoint 1 person. That would be a membership of 15. That would be a model where you have outside members or outside organizations also represented on the committee in addition to yours. Or again, the other model would be that you all just appoint one, the superintendent appoints one, and that would be the committee. But this merits some discussion about representation. What I tried to do was capture the stakeholders that are involved with the district, with an eye to diversity and an eye to people that are really interacting with the district on a daily basis. And so that's reflected in the proposed membership. But again, it's your board, it's your committee and your membership, and you need to decide how you want to do it.
So we really have a kind of a choice. Either each of us choose one, inclusive would be the superintendent, or on the bottom you have listed. And the cautionary element, of course, is that we can't have this to become political. So I'm going to let, of course, the board members speak and share their ideas. Superintendent Davis.
Yes, ma'am, to the chair. Good morning. Thank you. The biggest thing, I know that the recommendation is for 2 for the superintendent. I would like to give one of those to the Hillsborough School Employee Federation, the non-instructional staff, because I think if we're going to represent all of our stakeholders, they should be inclusive in that process, if that's one of the plans we want to implement.
Thank you. And so I just added,
I'll add that.
you added it down, Mr. Porter. Repeat that again. This is the Superintendent Davis?
Yes, ma'am. This is the Hillsborough School Employee Federation. This is non-instructional staff.
Hillsborough School Employment Federation. Okay, we just want to make sure all the board members have it written down as a consideration. Okay, board members, let's go ahead and weigh in. You see we have kind of like 2 models, if you will, on participation. And there's also an application on the Finance Advisory Committee. There's an application. Some board members may want that only, or some board members may want a resume, and some board members may want both. So that's just really to vet who's on this committee. And feel free to also remark on that as well, board members. Here we go. So Member Perez and then Member Snively.
I appreciate that you have included the community, the Latinx, and also the NAACP into this, because they have been tremendously affected by our budget and budget crisis for not just the last few years, but for many years. So their eyes into our budget and the effectiveness or lack thereof, especially into their communities, is going to be a tremendous help. And they're guiding, as a lighthouse for us in this community. It's going to be tremendous. Their input is just going to be so welcomed and embraced, at least by this board member. So thank you for at least wanting their a member of their community into this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Perez, and I'm just working with the board as we speak. If we can go ahead and divvy this up with 3 different parts of this. First, we'll decide the appointments, then go for the qualifications, and then go for the amount of applications. So I'm writing things down so we can get consensus. Member Perez, with that being said, can you just also restate your amount of appointments just so I can make note of it? Would you decide
I think she's in favor of the model that's presented to you.
She's in favor of the model? Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. And then Member Snively, Member Vaughn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I too appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into recommending what type of members from what organizations, community partners, stakeholders should be on here. I understand that diversity is critical and that we're trying to be inclusive of that, and I really appreciate the superintendent's suggestion to make one of his appointees from HSEF. I would recommend that. No offense to the League of Women Voters, but I think we're going to open Pandora's box if we say League of Women Voters. Then what about the Chambers of Commerce? What about other organizations? We have a lot of stakeholders in our community, and I think the ones that have been selected have a direct and immediate relationships with the school district on a day-to-day basis, like you had mentioned and that's what you used, I think, for the selection process of these. So I would be in favor of the list as it stands, with the suggestion of the superintendent to make one of his appointees, or just change that to HSEF and be the ninth member, and then he would still have one appointee. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Snively. Member Vaughn?
Thank you. And thank you, Superintendent Davis, for, offering up your second appointee. I do agree that we want to represent all of our employees. So having our non-instructional employees represented, I think, is a really important start. I guess my question would be, and I'm in favor of having more of the community represented as opposed to just board members and the superintendent, is, what I'm assuming is that this is flexible, that we can start with this list, and if we wanted to, change it a year from now as we reevaluate or make changes or add more stakeholders, that we can do that, I guess would be my first question.
The answer is
and
yes.
Then I did,
yes
sorry,
to that.
Reevaluation.
You can do whatever you want, board members.
can do whatever you want. And then I guess I just wanted to say,
as long as four of you agree.
I didn't hear that, but
as long as four of you agree, you can do whatever you like. So.
Right. The next piece would be, I think you're asking about what you wanted feedback was as far as the application is concerned.
Not yet. We're going to hold off on that, Ms. Vaughn. We're going to try to break this down just on the membership, and then we'll get to that. Absolutely, we'll get to that.
Okay, so yeah, I'm in favor of having the 15 members, and I do like having our non-instructional staff represented as well. So that's my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Vaughn. Member Washington, and then Member Hahn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree too with Member Perez and Member Slavely. This is an outstanding list. The NAACP definitely should be on there because they've been a big supporter of Hillsborough County Public Schools for years. So it's important to have them on there. And thank you to Superintendent for putting the HSEF on there. Those people are so important when we make the decision. And I think you answered my question because I had pretty much what Member Vaughn had. Could we add on later? So we do have the capabilities of adding on. Okay. But I think this is a great list, and it covers, we can't have everybody on the list. I know we probably have some other organizations may want to get on the list, but like you said, later on, if we feel deemable for doing it, we will do it. So I think the list is good. I agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Washington. It looks like we're heading towards consensus. Member Hahn, and then Member Snively.
Yes, the member comes. I agree with my colleagues. I think the list is a nice representation of organizations that represent employees. The diversity is there as well. So I know Member Gray is looking for consensus, so I just want to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Snively, and then Member Combs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you go over a little bit about how the student would be? I'm a little confused about how who's going to select the student, and what the actual rotation will be for students.
So we use the Citizens Advisory Committee has a student representative, and there's a formula added in the CAC's bylaws that how the student is selected. So I use that language, and it's put in here that the CAC does it, and it's on a rotating basis. The principals are really involved with that, and there's a sort of a different student that comes for certain periods of time. You do not have to have a student. It was just a suggestion that would be a good way to engage students into what it's like for the finances of the district. And it doesn't have to be selected this way. We just didn't want to reinvent the wheel and use the model that's familiar to the system because of the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Would it be a 2-year term like the other members on the committee?
I think they rotate. Let's see. I don't know that it would be. I think there would be different ones throughout that period.
The reason I ask is
if you have a senior,
I know,
right?
They're
not going to be there. So
I think it's going to be a little challenging because it's going to take time to understand the school finance and to have a rotating student. Although I think it's a great idea to have the student a great learning experience for them. It's great exposure for them. I think that if they're only there for a year, it's going to be a little a little challenging. I don't know how much they're going to be able to wrap their heads around it if it's only 1 year at a time. And so I'm wondering if we should say it's going to be a junior and they serve their junior senior year, two-year term. If we rotate it too often, I think it will be a little confusing for that student to catch up on everything that's been discussed. I mean, there's going to be meetings that they have missed that they'll have to go back and review. I mean, they can review the minutes, but it's not going to quite be the same. So I don't have an answer for that. I don't have a solution necessarily. I'm just saying we should probably think about
Well, if you're in favor,
logistics.
if you're in favor of the idea of a student, I think we can work on the selection process because those are valid concerns. And
Yeah, I just want them to feel like they can still be a part of it, but in a consistent way, and be able to give valuable feedback. But I do think that if we're rotating it too frequently, then they may not be able to catch up and feel like they can be part of the discussion. Thanks.
It's a great point, and also to Member Hahn, at Jesuit, we actually in the junior year we started a political committee just to make sure the kids were knew about the process, knew the importance. So the junior year. Yeah, what your comments were very, very well said. And board members also remember that Mr. Porter took all of this from your ideas, and put this together as well. So this is this document, 4 pages, reflects your desires. So I think it's an excellent job. Here we go. Member Combs, Member Perez, and then Member Washington.
I also agree. I think it's a really great example of different people in the community. I would love to add somebody from the chamber, but I know we probably already have quite a few members in there. I don't want the group to get too large, but I do think it's a great representation of our community. It would just have been nice to add somebody from the chamber. And I also agree with Member Snively. I think 2 years would be good for a student because I think it's going to be very deep. It's going to be a lot of information, and we really want that commitment because I anticipate hopefully a lot of our members will stay for a long time. So that way we can really meet those needs by having people there for more than just, hopefully more than 2 years. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Member Combs, Member Perez, and then Member Washington.
Yeah, I've answered my own question, but just for the sake of the folks watching, is if you could just, because we've talked about the serving and the months, but can you speak just for the sunshine about what constitutes a quorum so that everybody will.
So if we had if there were 15 people on the board, 8 people would constitute a quorum.
So, but what would it look like for the other model, just in case?
If there were 7, or if there were, I would hesitate to have an even number board. So if you had 8 members, then 5 would constitute a quorum. If you had 9, then it would, 5 would constitute a quorum for that. Yes, right. English major doing math is not a good idea.
Wants to be a math major now too. All right. So here we go. Well, we're not going yet. Member Washington?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When we were talking about students, when we were talking about 2 years of Member Snavely, I was thinking about student government, because you remember some years ago we used to have student government to come to the board meetings, and maybe we could put a junior on there from the student government, and then they could serve their 2 years on there. So that's something to think about. Okay, thank you.
And actually, the junior position is so critical because their resume, colleges look at that particular year, and then you'd have the 2-year desirability, and that would be stable for the students. Okay, we have definitely consensus, board members, and if I'm not I'm sorry. Oh,
sorry.
Superintendent Davis.
Yes, ma'am, and I appreciate it. If we are going to a student perspective, we do have finance committees, finance magnets within our school district, so then maybe that would be a student that is a junior in those particular pathways, and let them be actively involved. That maybe they may be expedited with being able to enjoy numbers and the analytics behind it, so that may be an option as well.
Excellent idea. Thank you. And board members, again, thanks for these to solidify. So now we're looking at a very non-political committee, and we're also one that reflects diversity of our district, inclusive of students, which is excellent. Next, we're going to go into qualifications. That, board members, is on there's not a page number necessarily, but it's just about at the end, and it's on the top of the page.
Right, if we could read this on the first page, you're probably looking at different documents if it's in email format or if it's in this format, but I can read it for the purposes of the record.
Now, right after number 8, and hopefully the member Combs and member Vaughn have a copy of this.
They do.
Okay, go ahead and read.
So this, again, for the board appointees, you are in charge of your appointees. And you need to pick who you think is going to best serve on the committee and best serve the district. But as you choose, it would be helpful if you were thoughtful about this, and I'm going to read what I think is important for you to think about when you appoint. In the selection of members for the Financial Advisory Committee, board members, the superintendent, and other appointing bodies shall take into consideration that persons from the following fields of employment or with the following certifications, certified public accountant, financial municipal advisor, chief financial officer, chief executive officer, and executives or professionals in the insurance, banking, transportation, construction, maintenance, and food service industries, people with knowledge about public education funding and local school budgets, will provide the most effective representation on the committees. Board members will also take into account diversity and appropriate geographic representation when appointing members to the committee. All members of the Financial Advisory Committee shall be residents of Hillsborough County. No candidate for public office shall be selected to serve on the committee, and no person convicted of a crime of financial nature shall be appointed to the committee. So those are guidelines that would help you choose who to select. The other thing that you might want to consider is I attached for your purposes an application that you could have potential appointees fill out. That's absolutely not required. That idea came from Lee County, who has a similar committee structure, and I thought it was worthwhile you discussing. The other option would be to have potential candidates submit resumes. You could do one, both, or neither, and you could just choose people that you know in the community or in your districts or in the county that have the necessary background to make a meaningful contribution. Completely up to you. Again, I just wanted to give you an array of options for you to choose from.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. And absolutely, this is a great, complete authenticity of a very well-vetted committee member. So, board members, we're going to be talking about the applicant on this part of the session. So let's go ahead and get started. Member Vaughn. Member Vaughn?
Can you hear me? It took me a second to find the mute button. Can you hear me?
I certainly can. We can.
Okay. Thank you. So I think I was trying to get to this point before, but I like the application idea. I think that's a good way of kind of allowing people to submit the information that might be pertinent to us making a selection. And I don't mind having a resume as well. I think as much information is good for people who want to apply. And also, I don't know if this is the appropriate time to say this, but I think we had talked about whether or not if for some reason an appointee's cycle doesn't sync up with the member who appointed them. Let's say I made an appointee and there was maybe a special election and someone else took my seat, that the new person who filled my seat would have the ability to then reappoint someone to the committee that represented them. I know it's not structured like that from my understanding in our Citizens Advisory Committee. So I would just like that flexibility if there is a new board member to have a new appointee, but we can discuss that as well. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
And Ms. Vaughn, because of the conversation you and I had with that recommendation, I included that language, and I'll read it to the board. This is on page 2. A newly elected board member shall have the power to appoint a new member to replace a member appointed by the previous district board member. So to Ms. Vaughn's point, if the committee is going to reflect the board member that's seated at the time, and there's an election and there's a change in the seat, the newly elected board member would have the right to replace the person that had been appointed by the previous board member. That's Ms. Vaughn's suggestion. I added that for your consideration.
And that's, yeah, a very important consideration. Thanks. We're going to go ahead with comments regarding the resume, the application, the applicant's qualifications. Member Snively?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the option of doing an application or submitting a resume or a biography. I think that the application, and this is just in my opinion, I think it's rudimentary for the caliber of individual that we are going to ask to serve on this. So I think some of the questions on here are a little too basic. However, I understand that there's some vetting that needs to be done by some of the board, and I also understand that it's important to be transparent and public about the qualifications of the individuals that are being selected for this committee. And so that's why I believe that a resume would be just as valuable to the board as an application would be, and keeping the committee application an option to complete, and allowing a resume or a biography in lieu of the application. So it's an either or type of choice for that individual. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Snively. Member Hahn, and then Member Perez.
When I look at the application, I agree. It's very basic. It's a starting point. So I would not just want to see this as our only piece of information. I would also like to recommend a resume and a bio in addition to the application. Because again, this is not your ordinary volunteering situation. We need very experienced, high caliber individuals applying. We need to be able to vet them with information beyond this application. And again, to Member Snively's point, the public deserves the transparency on the qualifications of the individuals serving on this board. Thank you.
Ms. Combs would like to be added.
Okay, thank you, Member Hahn. And yes, this is we're the 7th largest district in the country, so the highest caliber of person should be considered. So we're going to go into the next one is Member Perez, then Member Combs.
I agree. When somebody presents a resume, it speaks loudly to the quality of professionalism that they have behind them and what they are able to bring, especially to this board, and what we need, and to serve. So that's my take on that.
Thank you, Member Perez. Quick question, Mr. Porter. We're looking at only individuals from our district, correct?
Hillsborough County, yes, that's the suggested requirement.
Okay, we just wanted to...
Your individual board districts, they have to reside in Hillsborough County. So you would have the flexibility to appoint anyone from the county.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Member Perez. Member Combs, then Member Snively, Member Washington, and then Member Hahn.
I would concur with what everyone has said. I definitely think that a resume and the application, and I think that will allow us to vet higher individuals. And I think it's great that we don't have to be just limited to our district. I think, of course, we'd like to have a representation all over the district, but I think it's really important because sometimes we may not be able to find the right person. We want to find the best people for these positions. So I think it's great that we're going to open it up district-wide.
Thank you, Member Combs. Next, we have Member Snively.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify what I mentioned earlier. It was the application would be, it's an either or. It's not and so it would be the resume, and the resume we could say it needs to encapsulate some of this that's on the application. And if it doesn't, then we can ask them to complete an application, but I don't know that they need to do both. If all the information that is on their resume also is included already on their application.
So let's talk about that for a second to make sure that we're all cleared. I don't want to stifle the board's discussion, but I want to make sure I have clear direction. So the way I have the suggested language right now is this: all school board and superintendent appointees shall complete the attached application for membership. And I was going to say submit the attached application and a resume. Now, if we want to make it sort of either or, we can change that language. I want to make sure there's consensus from the board for that, to make that either or.
The other point that I would, or the other question I have is based on some of the questions on the application with regard to relationships with the Hillsborough County School Board. I'm assuming we'll be requiring each of these members to sign a conflict of interest disclosure in addition to submitting a resume or application.
Excellent point, Member Snively, and I see that Mr. Porter's writing that down. I'm going to weigh in a little bit later. I'll listen to everyone else. And Member Snively, is that all? Okay. Member Washington, then Member Hahn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also, Jim, on this, the bio, does that substitute for the resume? I mean,
That's up to, we could do that. You could have a bio instead of a resume. It's up to the board. I could use that. I could use that language as well.
oh, okay, because I think we have a lot of information on the bio that is compatible
Okay.
to the. Yeah, that's the comment I wanted to make about the bio. I think it's important to have that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Washington. Member Hahn?
Thank you. In looking at the application, I wouldn't want to confuse the process by saying you can do either or. I don't think, a lot of this is check mark. I don't think it'll take too long. And under this part where it says other related skills, abilities, they could just put see resume if they, you know, obviously. And then I'm a little like, why are you interested in serving on this committee? And there's one line. I just, you know, I would like to hear more than just a sentence or a phrase. I don't know if we can say, please provide a paragraph or at least a paragraph on why. I don't know how to, you know, we want to discuss that, but I think we need, you know, a reason more than just a sentence. And then I would not, again, want to see an either or between the resume and the bio. I would like to see the application, the resume, and a bio. I'd like to see all three. I think a resume really captures, you know, years of experience. It goes, you know, it talks about other boards they sit on, and it provides more detailed information. Sometimes a bio doesn't include all that information. I mean, it's, you know, it's nice to have, I agree, but I'd like to see all three. Again, we're looking for the highest quality individuals, and again, if they're very committed to wanting to serve on this board, I think they'll take the time to put that package together. Many of them probably already have a bio that they can just pull. It's not something that they already have to create. Many people have a resume that they have on file that's, you know, easy to pull, and this application shouldn't take long. I think the time that they're going to have to put in is, why are you interested in serving on this committee? Thank you.
Point well said. Superintendent Davis?
Yes, ma'am. Through the chair, through Dr. Hahn's point, we can make. We're going to work on this. Chairman's going right now to make this automated so that it can be an open box. It's not just one line; it's an open box. They can fill out as much information as they need to through a narrative, and then that way it's a consistent process for board members to continuously pull any resume, any application that's online, have accessibility to it.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Member Hahn. And I absolutely agree. Highest caliber, again, we're using that word. We want the highest caliber district, so let's go ahead and get the best of the best. Oh,
Sorry, I just had one more comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
around,
Go ahead.
Appointing from district and versus countywide. I know that we've talked about this a little bit in the past. Maybe board members just appoint from their district versus appointing anywhere in the county. My concern is if we have, you know, equity. If five people are appointed from my district and there's no one represented from Ms. Snively's district, you know, I just want to make sure that there's equity across and we don't have everybody coming from one area in the district.
So we built that into the bylaw.
And I just want to add to that, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the other organizations will be able to appoint from across the district. So again, I don't know how we, you know, manage that, but my concern is equity across the county.
So I was concerned about that too, because it is a very large geographic area. And so as part of the things that we ask you to be thoughtful for in your appointments was not just diversity, but geographic diversity. And so I hope that you would all be thoughtful about that as you appoint. And if you want to appoint from your district, you can. But if you know someone that's really good that lives maybe right outside your district lines, you would have that option. But it is, we would ask you to be thoughtful about geographic representation. That's always a big issue in Hillsborough County.
Yeah, and maybe as we're going through the process, you could let us know as a board if it doesn't appear equitable, and then we could kind of, rethink maybe some. I just want to make sure that there's every area of our school district is represented in some way. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
So if we're in piano lessons, every note is hit. Sorry about that, Ms. Snively. I know you're in the music more than I, but that was the visualization. Thanks, ma'am.
Add Ms. Combs to the queue, please.
Righto. So, I'm just going to weigh in somewhere my name is there. I agree. Again, top caliber application, resume, bio with photo. I think it's a great, with photo because, again, we want to see who we're having, and so that's my 2 cents. Next we have, and then we'll finish up with this and we'll make the decision. Member Vaughn, Member Snively, and then Member Combs.
Thank
Member
you.
Vaughn?
So we're asking for this application, or we're deciding what the appointee would need to submit. Is that because we're going to have an open window and then they submit it through the website? Because, I'm wondering, are they going to send us emails specifically? Like, how are we? I know Superintendent Davis mentioned it being automated, but, I'm wondering, if we decide on, let's say, a resume and the application, can we as members then, as we make our decision, ask for a bio if that's something specifically that we all wanted? Was my question. I mean, I think personally, I don't care. I don't need to see what somebody looks like. I don't need a picture. I don't need a bio. I think a resume for me and an application is good. So I guess my question is, at what time period are we requesting this? Where is this documentation being submitted? How are we getting it? And then the next question would be, is the application itself, can that be left up to the committee to refine and add things as they go along? Would they be allowed to have input on that? Because as we've mentioned, the first few months is going to be kind of building the infrastructure. So if we start with a basic application, can the committee fine tune that and add, suggestions as we go forward? How much input will the committee itself have on the application process?
But the application process is the board, not the committee. So if the committee wants to comment on it, they would have the right to. But this is a board decision, not a committee decision, and it's how you pick your committee. So of course they could have input, but I don't anticipate, or I would not anticipate them driving what the application looks like. That's the board, and how you want the committee to look is why the application exists. So that would be the thought on that. And then
so I guess my question would be, if we decided to start with this application and then we decided in 6 months after we did some appointments that we would like to add things to it, is that something we just take a consensus to? Does that come across as an agenda on a board meeting to change the application? What would be the process if we wanted to add more things as we kind of fine tune this committee?
Yeah, it would be a board decision. We'd schedule for an agenda and a board meeting, and you would discuss it and change it as you like. You always have that flexibility.
Okay, so I'm in favor of a resume and an application. I think that if people want, additionally, if members want a bio or a picture, that should be able to be requested individually. And then I guess the final question was just, how is this information getting to us? Is it on the website? What does the application process look like? Details surrounding that.
Yeah, I think once we bring this in for a landing today and you approve this structure, we'll work with the internal system to make it easy for you all to do this, get the word out, and make it easy for people to apply. And we'll work with Jeremy on that probably.
Correct. That's correct. Yep. Through the chair, we'll be ready. We'll once we build it out, and they're working on it right now, going ahead and refinement. We'll send it to the board for final review, so we can make any adjustments. And then we can be able to send this out through all of our social media outlets, put it on our webpage, and then just identify a timeline. We'll put a cover letter with it as well, and then have full accessibility to the board so that the board can interact and see as applications are coming in to start that review process.
Thank you, Superintendent Davis. Well, what we heard from Vaughn is she is for the application and resume, but not necessarily for the bio. So we're going to keep going for consensus. And we're looking now at Member Snively and then Member Combs.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I can live with the and rather than the or. Okay. I do think that a bio is important. However, perhaps what we do is we get the application, which I have some requested edits on, plus the resume, and once they're selected, then we get a bio for each one, and we put them on our website so that people can see who serves on the committee. Okay, that way the public can go on and see each individual and their credentials on our website once the committee has been selected. How does that? Hopefully that sounds good for everybody. The other thing on the application, it does say, are you able to commit to at least 8 meetings a year? Should that be 12 meetings, or are we going to say that 8? Okay, all right. Should we talk about attendance requirements at this point?
Let's wrap this up and then get to that.
Okay. And then how did you hear about this committee? I don't know that question needs to be on the application.
Oh, yeah.
I understand the questions, the last 3 questions. I don't know if we need as much detail, if we need to leave space for detail, because if they're going to sign a disclosure agreement or disclosure for conflict of interest or something, is it redundant to have those questions and then, or?
I think it may potentially be redundant, but you also then have it in one form. Reference it.
Okay.
So I think for transparency purposes, I don't mind a little redundancy for that purpose.
Okay, and then and then the final thing is I understand our. Well, actually, I have one more thing. The next thing is I understand our desire to be diverse. I don't feel comfortable asking for ethnicity and gender on the application. I think it should either be optional or not at all. I don't think it should really matter what ethnicity or gender they are. If they have the qualifications to serve, I think that we will know our communities and we will understand the need for ethnicity, the need for diversity, and we will be cognizant of that as already stated in the purpose and the selection of our membership. So I don't want to deter anyone from answering that question or feel uncomfortable answering that question. And so I would recommend that we remove those or at least make them optional at the very least, so that people don't feel uncomfortable answering those questions on the application. So, and then the final thing was, Dr. Hahn, and you kind of alluded to it too, Mr. Porter, I am concerned about the geographical diversity, because many of the organizations that we're asking for membership are headquartered in Tampa proper, right, on this side of the county. And so I would ask, and I don't know how to ask this of these organizations, but I'm hoping that these organizations also take that into consideration, that all parts of the county, north, south, east, west, not just Tampa centric, be represented on this committee. And that's all I'll say about that. Thank you.
And this is a really important point. Actually, you had 3 points there. First, I think we're all going to land on that, where you have the resume and the application, and if they're selected, then they can put a bio in with their photo. So I think that's a home run there. The indicate ethnicity and gender with the optional, Member Snively, I think would be the best, versus taking it all off, because you know what, maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I definitely don't want to go ahead and put anyone in an uncomfortable position. And you see that when we use the word I, we're speaking as individual board members, not for the whole board. So I'm agreeing with that. And last, the geographical diversity. I don't know, Mr. Porter, you may come up with a way to make sure that it's not all in one area. So your comment?
I can't ensure that. What I can do is create language that encourages you to be thoughtful. And I think for the 2 county-wide board members, Ms. Perez and you, Ms. Gray, are sort of really need to be sensitive to that too, because you represent the whole district. Other board members represent geographic areas that are throughout the county. So I think it's up to you all to be thoughtful about that as you appoint your committee members, and or, we could try to dictate that, but I think that we want to give you as much flexibility with your appointees as possible. And I think Dr. Hahn had an excellent point about encouraging the other appointing bodies to be sensitive to geographic diversity as well. And we can certainly talk to the people who will be, or the organizations that are appointing, to be sensitive to that. That benefits everyone. And people need to have buy-in into this, and one way to have buy-in is to make sure that there's representation across the board.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Porter, and I think we're getting into the, we're getting into the main landing here, the main landing strip. Superintendent Davis?
Yes, ma'am. Through the chair, just want to ask, is there a appetite to put on the application what district the individual may live in, just for information purposes?
Sure, we could do that.
That's a good idea. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Yeah, I was just going to say, boy, we're impressed this morning. So here it, okay. Right now I'm into flight patterns and I'm looking for landings. So at any rate, yeah. So glad that we can all laugh and really at the same time have consensus. We do need some fun. Thanks, everyone. But we still have two more comments, and then I think, Mr. Porter, we should wrap it up. Oh, sorry. Member Combs and Member Hahn, you're recognized, one at a time.
Well, I think we've come to a consensus. I do definitely believe that we should have the application as well as the resume. Maybe an idea would be on the application to write current profession, so we have an idea of what that person's current profession is, although we will have the resume. The other idea, and I think Dr. Hahn made a good point, and everyone's been talking about the location, maybe what we can have is some type of map that shows where the members are currently kind of, where we're placing them, especially outside the district, the other, 8 community members that are coming. So that kind of allows an individual who is representing a district kind of really think about that, be more thoughtful about trying to find someone from their district. So maybe some type of live map or some type of map where as we're putting committee members in, we can kind of see what it's looking like. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, visual representation is so critical. Absolutely. Thanks, Member Combs. Excellent point. Member Hahn?
Thank you, Member Gray. Mr. Porter, would this be the appropriate time to discuss process once the application process has been closed as to do we submit to you 2 or 3 choices? Because if we're appointing people outside of our district, 2 or 3 of us could come up with the same person, and then how is it decided who goes back to the drawing board, and what is that process?
Yeah, the expectation is that these would be your appointees only. They would not require a board vote to ratify
right,
that.
I understand.
So I think you raise a very good point. So I think as you were getting ready to appoint someone, I would be happy you could ask me if anyone else was going to appoint that person, and I'd be happy to do that. Without violating the Sunshine Law, of course, I'd have to be careful about that. But
right.
To avoid any sort of overlap, I think we could do that.
Okay. Instead of maybe us giving a first and second choice, and that way, if our first
I would
choice
really hesitate to get between you and your appointees. So I think you give me your choice, and I'll just confirm that person's not going to be appointed by someone else.
Okay.
And then if it is, then I think we can go back to the drawing board.
Okay. Thank you.
I really want the board to have that power to do that on their own without interference from me or from anyone else.
Yes, I appreciate that. I just wanted to have a clear understanding because I know I'd get some questions after the meeting today about that process. Thank you.
Okay. So with that being understood, and thank you, Member Hahn, for making that clarification. I think we covered it very well. Mr. Porter, can you give a summation and tell us where we're at?
We've taken, these have been excellent comments, board members. I appreciate all the time you spent on this and the feedback and coming to consensus. It was, I think, a very important meeting today. I think you just need a motion to approve the Financial Advisory Committee as discussed today, as amended. We'll finalize it. I'll work with staff to get the application process up and running, and we'll come up with a timeline for you sooner rather than later so that you can get your appointees appointed and the committee formulated. So I think just a motion on the floor to approve what you discussed today would be appropriate.
Okay, board members, I need a motion on the floor to approve what has been discussed with regards to the Finance Advisory Committee. I need a motion and I need a second. Oh, sorry. I have a motion by Member Perez and a second by Member Washington. Will there be any discussion? We have a question by Member Snively.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I feel a little bit uncomfortable until I see a final document. I know we've talked about a lot of things, so I will be honest that I'm not real comfortable voting on it until I see a final version of what we talked about today. So I don't know when one would be ready. I understand that there's some urgency to this. I know we have another board meeting coming up in this month. And so, in my opinion, I would rather see a final draft before I make a vote on it, and I would be happy to wait until that comes out and maybe vote at the board meeting later this month.
Whatever the board wants, we can do.
That's what I feel comfortable with.
I did intend to trick you all, not.
I understand. We talked about a lot of things. I just want to see a final product. So.
Up to you all how you want to do that. We could bring
Okay.
it to a board meeting with a final draft, or you could vote today and amend it later if you like. It's completely up to the board.
Okay, so I think Member Hahn wants to also remark, and I think that dotting the i's and crossing the t's. Very important that we are blessing the final copy. July 29th is our next board meeting, but I would like to subtract any other. I can't force no more discussion, but hopefully that will be a final product. Member Snively?
So I know there's a motion on the floor already, Mr. Porter. Would that motion need to be withdrawn before I move to continue?
You could
I could make a motion to continue.
A separate motion, and you could do that. And if you want to try that and see if your board members agree with you, you would need a second.
Okay.
If it succeeds, it'll come to the July meeting. If
Okay.
not, you'll go back.
Then I will so move to continue.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's been seconded.
So the motion on the floor now, and it's up for debate if you like, is whether to continue this until you see a final draft at the next board meeting. And if you're in favor of that, you would vote yes. If you want to vote today and finalize it, you would vote no. And you can have debate on that if you like a continuance.
We can discuss that this time. Would there be any discussion? Member Hahn?
I would agree with Member Snively. I would like to see everything we discussed in a draft form before we actually vote on it. I know that there's urgency to get this started. I know the community wants to get this going, but I do want to make sure that everything is in order. We don't have any missteps. I think this is an extremely important committee that we are putting together, and I think waiting until 2 weeks till our next meeting would be a sufficient amount of time. Thank you.
And very prudent and very cautious. Whenever you deal with money, we have to be very, very careful. And so at this point in time, I believe we have one more comment, though, from Member Vaughn. And Superintendent Davis. Member Vaughn, would you allow Superintendent Davis just to chime in real quick?
I can go. I can let Ms. Vaughn go first.
Okay.
It's fine. You can go, Superintendent Davis. It doesn't matter.
Okay. I'll let you go, Ms. Vaughn.
Okay. Member Vaughn.
Okay. I'm completely fine voting today. I think that there is an appetite for it, but if it's the will of my fellow board members to have a little more time and, get their final eyes on it, I'm okay with doing that as well.
Thank you, Member Vaughn. Superintendent Davis?
Yes, ma'am, Chair Gray. So I want to make certain that I'm clear. Our action steps would be to, develop a cover letter to be able for the board to review, to build an application process for the board to review with all of the questions identified. Also being able to give the board a timeline for launch, what that timeline will look like, what media connections and social media will we leverage, and at the same token make certain that we embed any particular trainings that we would want to leverage for this committee for the board to review as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Member Snively?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for reviewing that, Mr. Superintendent. And so at the next board meeting, I guess the expectation would be almost a presentation and for the public's consumption that we would have this to vote on, and then we would have the complete process that you would present to the board and all the details. And I think that would be appropriate time to vote on the whole gamut of this entire project of the finance committee. So that's what I would hope the other board members would agree on, if there's some consensus to that, and then we could move forward from there.
Through the chair, would this be on the workshop agenda or the regular agenda?
Regular agenda.
It would need to be on the board agenda because they need to vote on it.
All right. Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you.
It would be moved down to discussion, and it will be a visual as well.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think the board members are happy with the input, and Mr. Porter, you did an excellent job. You gave us the guidance to make the remarks. Subsequently, we will now have an agenda item on the July 29th. Board members, we have to vote. We have to vote on this.
Yes.
Yeah, we have to vote on the continuance. Mr. Porter, can you restate the motion?
So the motion that Ms. Snively made, that's on the floor now, is to continue this item until the next board meeting for a final draft and for the process to be complete and presented to the board and the public.
Okay, do we have a second? It's already been seconded. Let's go ahead and vote when your lights are on.
Just to continue to the next board meeting.
Yeah, mine's not working. Yeah, mine's.
Ms. Combs votes yes. Ms. Vaughn, could you raise your hand if you vote yes?
Okay.
Votes unanimous.
So I can say unanimous because I'm now very nervous in the service on that one.
Counts to 7.
Okay, we're good to go. Thanks, board members. Again, such great conversation and input. We're going to now move to the area of student code of conduct. It's the big binder, and while they get everything in place, board members feel free to stand up and stretch. I think we probably have, we'll give it an hour for this. We're going to go ahead and stretch, it looks like. Take a few minutes to stretch while they get everything together.
Is this part of the special called board meeting, or are we needing to reset?
Okay, I'm waiting for Member Combs and Member Vaughn and Member Snively. Board members, we will conclude at noon today. I have an obligation, I'm sure most of us do. So we're going to go ahead. Mr. Porter, do we have consensus, a quorum?
Yes, you have a quorum.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and begin. Thank you, Member Combs, for tuning in. And Ms. Bays, would you go ahead and get started with the Student Code of Conduct? And thank you for being so patient, every one of you.
Yes, good morning. I'm actually going to turn it over to the superintendent. I know he would like to honor and introduce our cast of characters here.
Okay.
Yes,
thanks.
ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Bays. This team has been working really hard all year to be able to address some of the equities and deficiencies and areas of opportunity within our Code of Student Conduct, along with the way that we interact with our students from our district, for our school-based leaders, at the same token with our teachers, just to build that capacity of really focusing on building positive behavior supports, interventions within our schools. And today we have a great team here today that continues to show, and I know that we had to end the presentation early the other day, but it should be commended about the, all of the arrest data that has declined, along with the student discipline data that has continued to decline this year. And it's contributed to the hard work these individuals are working every single day with our staff. So we have Josh Crystal, who's the General Director of the Office of Student Engagement. We also have Mrs. Hudson, is the Director of OSE as well. Ross Anderson, who does really good job with our students, continue to make certain we get students on the pathway to save their lives, give them a sense of hope, and we thank him. I said when I walked in, we're going to grow his program, put a little pressure on him. Christy Doran is here as well from the same office from OSC and works with DJJ as well. And we have Mr. Keller from Student Services. And we have Ms. Hogue as well, Dr. Hogue as well from Student Services. We have Ms. Workman from ESEs in the back. And then we also have Julie Sarmiento as well. She's like, whatever, dude, get it right. Student Services, and Dr. Houghton continues to make sure we're in compliance. And we also have Chief Newman as well, and along with Monica Vera-Torado, continues to help make certain that we create equity across the school district, inclusive environment for our schools. So I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Bays and talk a little bit about where we're going, what we're doing, and to be able to pose any questions, answer any questions posed by the board today.
Thank you, sir, and good morning, everyone. We appreciate this opportunity again to address any questions and concerns that you have. I know that the presentation last Tuesday was quick and rapid. We're welcome to revisit any of it, but what we want you to recognize and understand most of all, what we are trying to do more than anything is to keep our children in school, to keep them safe, to keep them healthy, to keep them strong, to keep them off the streets and out of trouble, and at the same time to provide supports for them and for their families, whatever social, emotional, mental health supports they need, and to provide strategies for our teachers, not only to assist the students, but to assist the teachers as well. And on that note, I think that unless you have anything you'd like us to revisit, we can open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you, Member Bays, Ms. Bays. And at this point in time, board members, we do have questions, and what we have also, and this comes from Ms. Bays, is this is not a one and done. So if we have to have another time, because this is critical, how our kids behave directly influences how much they're going to learn. And so with that understanding, board members, if you have further questions after the noon hour, you can do one of two things. Look forward to another not a special call board meeting, but a workshop, and or ask questions to Ms. Bays and her staff. So having said that, board members, let's see, we're in the queue. Member Perez is first, Member Washington. And would it be helpful, Ms. Bays, for us to mention the page number? What would be best for the board members to?
Certainly. It can be the page number, or it can be the area, so that we can have an expert of a certain area respond to a question. So whichever works best regarding the question.
Okay, thank you. And one other thing, for process, would the board members want to call on a particular expert, or how would you like for the board members to address, or Mr. Superintendent Davis?
Yeah, I think that they can just ask, and if they know the area. For instance, if it's a question about the Department of Juvenile Justice, they can direct it to Chrissy. If it's about attendance, they can direct it to Ross, and so on and so forth. And if they're not sure, then it's a general question. All of us will just jump in and answer.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, again, Board Member Perez and then Board Member Washington.
Thank you. So on page 9, I see that you're demonstrating that the student arrests on campus are decreasing. But my concern is that the Black and the Latino arrests are still higher. What are you doing to address those issues? And I still have more questions.
So in terms of arrests, we're having the two. These are on-campus arrests. One of the big features that we're using and utilizing is the introduction of services from mental health services to connect with students. If they are able to qualify for a civil citation, that is the big piece of it now, is that previously students weren't able to connect with a civil citation. They didn't qualify. Now we're opening it up to more students.
But it's in relation to specifically the Black and Hispanic.
Yes, well, again, that's when it'll come into play as we're meeting with the students, and that's going to be the training that's going to be provided to the Civil Citation Division, that group. We're working with Chrissy Dorian, John Newman, and we're going to put together civil citation training that's going to be ongoing throughout the year.
Okay. On 16, I get that you're doing the civil citations, but have we ever attempted with the mental health supports, especially for the Black and Hispanic communities, have we attempted the yoga meditation rooms at all here in Hillsborough County as an option?
So we do have some schools that have rooms, but I don't think it's uniform across the district.
Okay.
I know some of our middle schools and our high schools have those meditation relaxation where the students can go and they're either provided with support from a student services staff member, counseling. They can do group counseling in there, but it is not uniform across the district at this time.
How about looking at where those rates are higher with the Black and Hispanic in those schools and implementing yoga, meditation rooms in those schools? By now, one would think that those rates for the Black and Hispanic communities would be much lower at this point. Just saying. That's a concern to me that those numbers still are higher. And on page 19, where you propose a change of environment, where the students, where do they go? And that's also connected with the yoga and meditation rooms. Where would those students go when you let them go for a change of environment?
Yes, so the change of environment process utilizes the alternative schools that we have, if needs be. Often it's not really moving the students. Less than half of the students that we've met with have actually been moved to other schools. In the change of environment is really the Office of Student Engagement. That's where we get to meet and connect the students with services before returning them to school with the appropriate connected services.
Okay. And on page 23, when a civil citation is issued, where is that issued? On school campus, off of school campus? Where is that issued?
Yes, it's issued on school campus.
On school campus.
Sometimes it's at the Jack Center, the Juvenile Assessment Center, but it's most of the time on school campus.
Okay. And my last question is, I sit on the board of Safe and Sound. Do you have a working relationship with Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office or the Tampa Police Department?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Through the Juvenile Justice Board, we meet monthly. We have a great relationship, yes.
Okay, because I have the arrest percentage for males. It's for Black males is 58%, with Hillsborough County's Sheriff's Office and Tampa PD, and the females is 54.7. So it might as well be 55%. And actually with the Black males is 59%, which is a major difference. And And I could send you a copy of these numbers.
Are those 1920 numbers?
These are current numbers.
And are those community arrests or on-campus arrests?
Community arrests.
So the community arrests were 2,000. I'm going to give you the exact numbers.
2,027. For males, females was 657, for a total of 2,684. So there's still a lot of work that still needs to be done for our communities, and also, with our Hispanic. So, that working alliance still needs to be shored up. And, if we could look at those meditation and yoga rooms, superintendent, to help our youth, and see if we could get this number to decline much more than it has. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Through the chair, Board Member Perez, I just wanted to add that we're doing two different types of tracking. One is for the on-campus arrests for incidents that occur on campus, and the other numbers are for those that happen in the community. Now, while we are really watching and tracking and want to reduce the number in both of those, our primary focus right now is to train all of our schools and to get the number of arrests on campus down. So we are thrilled about working in partnership with law enforcement. We're just doing both trackings at the same time.
Ms. Bates, can I ask one question? Sorry, Ms. Gray.
Yes.
Ms. Bates, I know we may have spoken about this. We do track arrests that happen within our schools that are offenses on our campuses. There are a number of arrests as we track as well that happen outside in the community that whether it be Tampa PD or whether that be Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, or they come into our campuses and arrest. Is there any way that we can have a better coordination of making certain these arrests do not happen on our campus, and that we can really transition to have a meetings place and get the parents involved and go to the sheriff's office and turn themselves in versus them coming on campus and arrested individuals on our school property?
We are working on that. That is in progress. And as you know, our resource officers do not do any of the arrests on campus. So we are working with law enforcement agencies outside to try to not have that interfere with the academic environment.
Yeah, I think it does disrupt, so thank you.
It does.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Member Perez, you finished on that one? Okay. Member Washington, followed by Member Vaughn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions and comments. First of all, I really like the idea that we're taking out disrespect, because many times a lot of students have been suspended from schools for disrespect, and disrespect is in the eye of the beholder. And that was a great move you made on that one, because I remember many times of being an AP or administrating the school sites. Teachers said, well, they looked at me, they said something under their breath, and you put them in ISS, and you go through all this nonsense. So that was really a great a great move. But disrupted behavior and tardiness, what are we doing to help the schools out? Because I know a lot of times there are certain schools, it's going to be very difficult to control this. And we are talking about arrest records, but we also are talking about the pipeline, because many of these leads to the pipeline when a student is disrupted, being tardy from school, being suspended. So can somebody elaborate on that for me, please?
Yes, sir. One of the things that we are also bringing to the table is what's called a school-wide behavior plan. What that plan does is have a common understanding of what happens on campus. So not only will the teachers and the students, but even our support staff, they'll be trained on what are some things that we can do to encourage kids to be in class. When they're out of class, when they're tardy, when they're skipping, there are other adults that are seeing them. And so what are some things that we can do to proactively address those needs? So of course we know that having those expectations, that we're going to have to develop them, we're going to have to teach them. Many times we say that when a student isn't reading correctly, what are we doing? We teach them. When they don't know math and can't compute well, we teach them. But sometimes when it comes to behavior, they say, well, we think they should know better. And so we have to be more cognizant on making sure that we're teaching what we expect and also being able to monitor.
Okay, and also, because we know our black and brown kids, we have a tendency sometimes to be, a little bit on the upside. How about tardy? Do we have a county-wide policy, or every school have their own tardy policy?
One of the things we're bringing back is the attendance intervention team. We're pulling data from daily attendance as well as by period. We're going to be connecting with schools. It's a combination of, we have Ross Anderson and Myrna Hoag's team. They're going to be working in conjunction to identify, to actually even reach out to the community. Mr. Anderson does a lot of home visits. We're going to be reaching out to the families individually and opening up those lines of communication between like the school and the families to really let them know where their students stand. And that's our large piece is community relations.
Okay, and also, I know, some times ago, we used to have like human relations specialists, intervention specialists. We have some of these people in schools so they can help these students out, because sometimes you need someone in besides a social worker that knows the community. Can anybody, are we doing anything like that, Sue?
I think we have the, I'm sorry, Josh. I think we have, that position has evolved. It used to be like student intervention specialist, and
Right.
then I remember under Ms. McCrae became the student success coach. So right now we do still have the student success coach position. It isn't offered at every single school. I am the supervisor of the student success coaches. So we were in a coaching academy this week. I actually left there from SPOTO to come here. And getting them on track and explaining some of the process and procedures and really diving into that role so that position can be elevated almost to the point that we're there to support students and advocate for students and to keep kids in school. And I think that position was, the foundation of that position is still there. So we're actually looking into those pieces along with other positions that are being created. So I just want you to know that there is that extra layer of support that's still there for our students.
Yes, because I think that's so important for students to have when they when they make a mistake. And sometimes, students make a mistake. That's why they're students. Kids, we all made mistakes before in life. That's the way life goes. But we also need somebody there to help and mentor those kids and get them back into school. So we still have a lot of work to do, but at least we're going in the right direction. Superintendent, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And through the chair, Member Washington, you're exactly right. So, since the pandemic started, we see a significant number of our students that are continuously late to school, and also attendance that are missing multiple days, 20, 30, 50 days in this school year. So one thing we've got to do this summer and beginning of the school year is stress the importance of the learner be getting back into normalcy and back into the schools. So that, I know that we have letters that we provide principals to be able to send out and educate parents, but we got to continue to leverage our social workers, our team members, and really start to create greater accountability for parents when learners are not showing up for school. So we're going to be aggressively monitoring that, because if they're not here, they can't learn. And this year coming up can't be like it was the last year and a quarter, where they are sitting at home, they can e-learn, they can transition, they can independently move. They've got to be here so we can help them, especially with address any mental health issues they may have, academic accelerations, and so we can be successful.
That's a great point, Superintendent. Because I think it'd be much better once we go to brick and mortar. Everybody would be back in school and things would be quite different. But as I said earlier, we're going in the right direction. We're working hard to come to the right direction. We always look at the big picture, but the small things, the one affects the pipeline. Everybody looks at the big picture about the pipeline, but the small thing, being late to school or being disruptive, being disrespectful, disobedience, all these things affect students when they're trying to be successful in the school. And our job is to help students. That's what we're here for, to help students. And so whatever we can do to help students, especially in the behavior part of it, because many times people don't understand students, So it's very important to continue to do what we're doing, and I thank you, and I know we're going to move forward. And all the people involved with the pipeline, this is the time, the community, because all of us is involved with this pipeline. It ain't no one-man show. Everybody's involved with the pipeline. So we need to work together as a team, and we have more help now. And Christy and I, we've been working for years, so we have more help now with agencies and so forth to help us out. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And Mr. Washington, this is Anderson. And just to add to what the superintendent indicated, we are looking at training the staff. So kind of getting everybody back on track on the looking at attendance and definitely period attendance, but also the community. We need to get the community back on track as far as making sure the kids are in school and what our expectations are of them, of our schools.
And thank you too, Ross, because you do a great job. I just want to say that too, because your men of vision, they're really on top of things. I thank you, and I really appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And board members, just be cognizant of the time. We have 30 minutes left with board member comments and obviously staff excellent answers to those comments and questions. Member Vaughn, followed by Member Hahn, followed by Member Snively.
Thank you.
Member Vaughn?
And I did have some time after the meeting to get some questions answered, and some were still hanging, so I would like a follow-up to some of the questions I asked after the workshop. First, with the civil citation, there was some questions about whether there's any financial piece to that, whether, if someone has to pay restitution associated with the civil citations, and I know we weren't quite sure. Was there clarification on if there's a financial burden with the civil citations?
Yes, ma'am. There are no fees associated with civil citations. Now, sometimes if restitution is one of the pathways that is chosen after they have received and been issued the civil citation, then that conversation is held with the families. We do have some parents who actually want their children to assist with paying restitution. When that happens, we certainly put that in. But there are no fees that are associated flatly with the civil citations.
But there may be some associated with restitution if that's what the judge imposes?
It's not a judge. This is done right within our Office of Student Engagement and with our law enforcement, but there's nothing that is incurred through the courts, no.
I see. And then I know that part of this plan mentions restorative practices continually, and I agree with Member Perez in regards to a meditation room or a yoga room. Those are kind of at the forefront when we talk about restorative practices. And I know there have been some mention, peer-to-peer counseling, possibly a peer-led, some sort of court system in regards to this. But what I'd like to know is where these are actually being implemented, if there's a matrix to follow, if there's some fidelity for each school to implement this, or when we talk about the restorative practices, what that really looks like as far as implementation.
Yes, thank you. The restorative practice is going to be an ongoing training. It's one of those terms that's very broad. It's going to look very different in a lot of schools, which is one of the reasons we talked about, could it be a peer-to-peer counseling? It will look different in a lot of schools as the training will be going on. It's everything from building back the restoring of the justice. So it's about training. We're utilizing 7 mindsets, a lot of online platforms for students to start to connect with what they did rather than a suspension. They'll be able to access the, even at home and families as well. So they'll be able to start building back what it is they did. When we talk about restorative justice circles, we can do things like we'll be training inside ISS and working with schools. So it is an ongoing training. We're really meeting with the schools. I know some work has actually been done in this district. We're working with Holly Say's team who's done that, and we're going to start implementing those trainings going forward.
So when we mention it throughout this document, what we're talking about is training, not actual any sort of infrastructure as far as these are the order that schools have to follow. There has to be this restorative practice. It's up to the discretion of the school. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, at the moment there is, yes, because of the level of training that they've required. So, for example, it could be as for something as a letter of apology that students have started to make amends with other students. So there's been some type of training that has happened, but we're trying to make it more uniform and roll out to schools so they have a bigger toolbox of options.
Just to piggyback on that, it is also a little bit grade band specific. So we have community circles and classroom circles at our elementary level, and yet then we are starting things like the peer court system and peer mediation at the middle school and the high school. So it is grade specific as well.
And then we had also talked about the bias training and how that was an option, and we hadn't talked about whether or not that's going to be a requirement. Did we get clarification on that?
Yes, ma'am. It's currently not a requirement. That's one of the items that is under discussion with Cabinet and with HCTA. But we do have implicit bias trainings going on right now. Mr. Anderson has been leading this, and I think you've had 780 administrators on site-based campuses who have already been trained in it.
Okay, so I just kind of want to reiterate that the restorative practices is a training, but there's no actual matrix or fidelity in how that's being implicated at the school level. It's a school-based decision. And then we are offering implicit bias training, which is optional right now.
The civil citation program is also called the JAP program, the Juvenile Arrest Avoidance Program, and it's run through the diversion program at the court. They also have a list of restorative practices that I can get to you that they utilize for the program.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Vaughn, and of course the whole envelope of conversation with the multi practice of affective domains is the PBIS conversation. Josh, I know you didn't have time to explain that to her, but that's a whole lesson. Okay, we're going to go ahead with Member Hahn. Member Snively.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make a quick comment to Board Member Vaughn. The implicit bias training also is being done through professional development, and it was housed out of Monica Villarato's office prior. So I just want to kind of give you that update.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for that clarification. All right, we're moving to Member Hahn and Member Snively. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Gray. Ms. Bays or anybody on the front row there, staff could answer, but yeah, cast of characters. When did the civil citation qualifications change? I may have mentioned that at the workshop, but
It has been available since, I believe, 2005, but now it's mandatory. It's a requirement for all first-time misdemeanors now.
Okay, yes. So when did that happen? When did it become mandatory?
April, I believe.
April? So just recently.
That's correct.
Right.
All 10 stakeholders signed the
Right.
signed interagency agreement.
So we may see some impact then change on some of the statistics because it's so recent, it's not really reflected yet. Because I was concerned when I saw some of the data as well, but we should hopefully see an impact the next time you bring data to us regarding the change to the citations. I really appreciate the multidisciplinary approach that we're now taking. It's wonderful to see organizations, community partners here today sharing in this conversation. I greatly appreciate your time here today. I know it's valuable. So teachers are on the front line, and I've had many discussions. I've had some meetings with groups of teachers around behavior, discipline, processes, and procedures since I've been a board member. I'm glad we're discussing it again today. Can you please, Ms. Bays, share with us how teachers were involved in this work, how many teachers were involved, at what levels in this work, because their voice is important. One, they're implementing this every day in our classrooms, and at times, the receiver of some of this managing this behavior, and it's very challenging for a lot of our teachers. So how was their voice heard in this process?
I'm very glad you asked this. So they were involved in our community committee, but furthermore, we had several of our community groups reach out to us and had teachers on board. And one of them specifically, the Sunshine Coalition Committee, reached out to us and had teachers. We were meeting with them every week, in fact, about every 3 weeks. And the teachers actually brought to us a terrific idea. They said, we would like to have some training on how to handle students who return to our classrooms after they have been removed, whether they were removed to a different site altogether or whether they were just out for a couple of days of suspension, or even if they were just removed from the classroom to take a break. The teachers that were representing others said, we're having a tough time how to handle those children when they come back, and we'd like to have some training. So I can turn it over to Katrina. She has actually started this training in the summer, and we have had the opportunities that we've had already have been filled by all of the teachers, so we're going to have to be having even more sessions of this throughout the summer. But they have been an integral part of this, and we are trying to respond to all of the trainings. But I'll let Katrina tell you about more that we've been doing this summer.
Yes, it was actually just yesterday, our first of 3. We decided to expand our professional development. It's called Engaging Students That Are Returning from Alternative Settings. And in that training, we're actually building that foundation as we did yesterday. We explained a little bit about our process and how students are leaving their classrooms and how we can welcome them back into our classrooms appropriately. And so as we start to go along, some of the questions, actually, we didn't have that many questions. We had a whole lot of celebrations of thank you for having something that's even having this conversation about our babies who are, who are coming from these alternative settings. And we just know that there's definitely a need, is basically what it's telling us, is that they are definitely struggling, and we want to make sure that we meet their needs appropriately. And that's actually what starts that school-wide behavior. We have to have an understanding of what's expected in our classrooms daily, but what's expected on our whole school campus. And so what we're doing is a data systems approach. The same way that we do instruction is the same way we're handling behavior. Let's look at what's happening on our campuses daily. What are we struggling with? Are we struggling outside the classroom or inside the classroom? What are some things we need to do? And we're building it around a team of people, just like we are. The schools will do the same thing, a team approach.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I have a few questions about the training. How many teachers are currently registered that showed up yesterday?
On yesterday's meeting was the targeted group was 6 to 12, grades 6 to 12. So elementary, because many of our elementary students don't go to alternative settings. So on yesterday we had about 20. Now we also have 2 more sessions of that, but we recorded it so that if those who start to get out and start to talk about what a wonderful time we had yesterday, we're expecting more.
So is it a rolling registration? So if they're watching today and find out about it, they can jump on to the next one?
Yes, and they do contact us when it was full. They reached out to us specifically, saying that they weren't able to get in, and we were able to broaden our maximum capacity to involve more people.
So could it, and I think that's wonderful that we're supporting teachers in this way, but for those teachers who do have students removed that then return, could this be a mandatory PD training for them, so that, we're making sure that because some teachers may have, more students come and go out of the classroom depending on the setting they teach in.
We certainly can. And one of the other messages that we're going to share with our administrators is that as we return back into school, we are willing to go out and do case-by-case trainings at schools so that teachers can have the settings and the trainings right in their schools and not be called off campus. We've got a wonderful team of agents here who can go and do that. So we want to be very responsive to specific requests, and we encourage them, if they're listening now, to be able to reach out to us and tell us what trainings they'd like.
Right. And I want to be clear. I'm not saying every teacher in our district should mandatorily have to take this. I'm just saying if we know a teacher is going to have a student returning, should we say you need to go watch this module or, get a webinar or something, so they're prepared to re-engage with the student. Also, that different concerns that have come up when I've talked to my teacher groups is around the process and procedures. So in the past, we've had concerns with teachers where because the data is tied to school grades around discipline and behavior, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Not behavior, not student chair, not behavior, just academic.
Academic. Well, isn't some of the number of disciplinary actions tied to school grades?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So some of my concern is around the fidelity of reporting incidents, and how are we ensuring that incidents are being reported, that they're not being discouraged by, the district or administration, and because I have heard that from some teachers that they're being discouraged to report incidents. And so how are we ensuring fidelity of reporting across schools?
I'll start and I'll get through the chair. We want to make certain that every incident is reported, no matter how small, how big, but we also want to make sure we're training teachers and leaders to be able to report accurate incidents that are aligned to the Code of Student Conduct. Very well moving the disruptive portion of it and being really clear about what the infraction may be, but we want everything to be reported, so it really gives us trends that let us know what we have to provide ongoing professional development for, and it strengthens the work. So we want a true picture of what's happening in our schools, and I think as we continue to coach and support our teachers, they'll have a better understanding of what the infractions may be. We want them to be transparent of what's going on in the class.
So let me just get some clarification, and maybe it wasn't tied to school grade, but are there any penalties for schools based on their reporting of data around the student code of conduct?
No, ma'am, there should never be any penalties.
So there's not a penalty for that?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
So there should be no reason to discourage reporting.
I agree. We encourage it.
Okay, thank you.
And the last thing, Dr.
Yes.
Hahn, is that we would have to, for us to mandate the professional development, it would have to be agreed upon through a contract. But we definitely can recommend it because of the power of it to be able to let people see the transition of individuals coming in and out of our schools.
Sure, because what we want is stability for our students, right? And best practice is that, we make sure that we have the safeguards in place so when they re-engage in their school and classroom that they feel supported, the teacher feels supported, and there's safeguards in place for the school and the student to make sure that there is stability. We want students when they come back to stay back.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
So if I can, one of the things that the big changes were historically there were 8 different regions with superintendents that were giving feedback to schools for their region. We now are just one shop. The same schools hear the same thing from the same group of people. So you're not hearing, it's not different depending on where you are, what location you are. A referral that would go one way at one school will be the exact same at another school. The other piece that happens with referral writing is actually beneficial so that we can help connect to the services. Because if a student gets in trouble and they hide that referral, we don't know who to connect them with. We're doing so much in the world of mental health and in different groups. By not writing that referral, it stops and delays us from being able to connect with the service.
Yes, I would agree. We want to make sure that we onboard services as fast as possible, and that's what my concern. I want to make sure, though, that there's that the schools are not going to be held harmful in any way for, higher numbers than other schools.
No, one of the things we actually have introduced is a level 0. Level 0 is for tracking purposes of students. You can still consequate the behavior and work with the student, but it's not about what they did. It's about tracking, because that's the majority of why teachers write referrals. They're just trying to get documentation purposes.
Right.
So we give them that without it impacting them to a level 1, 2, 3, or 4. It's a 0. It's more, we call it behavior incident tracking. It just lets us know something happened. We've got to work with that student.
Sure, because the important thing here is connecting services to the student, so we don't want to lose that information. Yes, thank you.
And as much as we're trying to observe that we have only 15 minutes, we know that the huge amount of information, every one of you, I would say the effect of the PBIS, the health system, one-on-ones, and the effect of civil citations, referrals, that should be done, because board members, this is a lot. And I know you're trying to capture, but we'll talk about it later. Okay, so let's go ahead. Member Snively, Member Combs, and then myself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this is, we could probably spend 5 days on this. All right, so I'm going to go real high level here on a couple things based on the feedback I get from teachers and the feedback I get from parents. And I'm glad Dr. Hahn brought up classroom management, and I appreciate the fact that not only are we providing classroom management trainings continuously, but we're also, as Katrina said, providing that what to do, how to manage students coming back into the classroom. And I don't have an answer for this, but I will tell you that is probably one of the number one concerns that teachers have, is how to manage their classroom. And I would hope that we could, I know we're providing training, but what other support do we provide? Like, look, if I'm a teacher and I have a classroom and I start noticing behavior from a particular child in the classroom, before something happens, and I've identified that there could be a potential issue, who would I go to for help? Who would I go to say, I have a student and this is the issue I'm having. Tell me how to handle this student so that it doesn't escalate to a level where it's a reportable incident.
The teachers can reach out to their student services teams, definitely. That's an appropriate referral, and through MTSS and just providing interventions, the student services team would work with that student to provide basic interventions, assess the situation. Maybe there's something going on at home, maybe it's trauma, could be multiple things. And then, put interventions in place and monitor that data and see how those interventions are working, and then continue to intensify if needed. And then we do have things like functional behavioral assessments, moving towards, if that's the way it's going, then we would go in that direction. But
okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Because do we survey the teachers as to how we're performing as far as support services go? Do they feel that we are adequately meeting the needs of their
of the teachers with regard to classroom management? What feedback do we get from teachers about how we're helping them and supporting them with classroom management?
Professor, do you want to?
Specific to that question, what I'm looking at is a survey that we might use for quality assurance purposes. So when any of us at the district level provide support to schools, we get some feedback. So it wouldn't be a formal, we're sending it out and it's open during this time frame. This would be something that we're going to look at attaching to our emails or some other mechanism so that we can constantly be informed about the quality of our support.
Okay. And not that we need another task force, but gosh, I think that if that's the number one concern or one of the number one concerns that teachers have with regard to their day-to-day functionality and ability to do their jobs, I would think that maybe we even have a teacher task force that says, here's how you can better serve the teachers across the district. Here's some ideas, here's some feedback, here's some concerns that we have. These are the supports that we must have in place in order to function at a high level on a day-to-day basis. So that would be the concern the biggest concern I get from teachers when I talk to them is classroom management, as Dr. Hahn mentioned earlier. So I'm glad and happy to support continuous professional development and anything that we can do to better support them. The second issue I get from parents, and that is bullying. And bullying seems to be one of the biggest epidemics across any school district, not just ours. And so I would love, and this could be a separate conversation, maybe someone could get back to me, but I'd love to know what we're putting in place with regard to managing the incident rate of bullying. How do we address it consistently across the district? That's the biggest issue, I think, from parents is consistency of addressing bullying from across the district, and what we're doing to try and intervene and prevent bullying from occurring. Again, we only have like a little bit of time, so if you want to come back on that one, I'm happy to.
I could address at least something about connecting with services. We do run, actually, out of our shop is the bullying hotline as well. So anytime we're giving out to families, they actually connect to us, and then we turn around and we connect with the schools to make sure they're addressing the students at the schools, what the parents' concerns were, and if we have to intercede and intervene, we have. But right now it's about connecting and defining what is bullying. One of the biggest problems that we're struggling with is students are bothering each other. There's a problem, but is it hitting that level of bullying? When you see true bullying, it's a severe issue. It's taking away someone's power and it's removing. But what we have is students aren't treating each other well. Right. And that's that next step is how do we get them each treating them as with responsible citizens? Yeah, with respect.
Right. And that's a very, very valid point is there's a line between disrespecting another person versus bullying a person. And I think it's the more we can educate our parents about what those differences are, the less confusion they'll have when they feel like they need to report something to the school, and it could just be two students that are not getting along because they're disrespecting each other. One's not respecting the other one. One other thing that I've addressed in the past is the communication of this. From a parent's perspective, a lot of times parents will only look at this code of conduct, really look at it when something has already happened. They use it as a reference. And so whatever we can do to make it easy for parents to access it, and easier to read, easier to consume. I don't know how to answer that, but as a parent, I think it's overwhelming to try and sit and read the code of conduct and then sign a form that says you agree that you read the whole thing. I'm pretty sure that most parents don't sit down and read the entire code of conduct. Yeah, it's.
So traditionally they had been given out to schools at the beginning of the last several years. It has been online in parceled pieces that you could hyperlink and click. What we've presented is actually the book that will be online and available in other languages as well. So they will be able to go and access this book. The table of contents will be hyperlinked to the pages that they desire, along with some of the other things to make it a little bit more fluid. But otherwise, you're going to see one book, not 107 pages. I think it's down to 60-ish, but it is double-sided. It's about 30, so it'll be a lot easier and manageable to at least have available to the students.
And whatever we can do to encourage parents and students, obviously, to.
There's an acknowledgement form that says that
Oh, I know
they did, but
it's a form.
It's a form.
Member Snively, I'd like to, if I may, just combine two of your concerns that you had, one with classroom management and one with communication. As the superintendent referenced earlier, we are anticipating a great need for us to be in supporting teachers as our children return. You know, our kindergarten teachers are tremendous at being able to herd little ones into class who are not used to being in class. Well, now K through 12, we're going to be herding children in who are not used to being in class. They've been at home, they've been in their pajamas, they've been playing outside, and now we've got to reacquaint them with what expectations are in classrooms. So we're going to be doing a full blitz for parents and for teachers, as well as for administrators, saying we're on hand right here and we're going to help offer the supports and the trainings, because everyone's going to have kind of a starting over point.
Thank you.
I can see, and actually, Member Snively, you just gave me the solution, and Member Hahn and Member Washington, when we have our next, it will be a workshop, we're going to go ahead, we're going to have our list of concerns such as bullying, disrespect to the teacher, training, classroom training, lack of communication, whatever the board members feel or experience, and then you're going to share what exactly you're doing, because there's so much, and I know, I'm aware, I've been working on this discipline for 2016. These the newer board members definitely have to be aware. So we'll talk about that later. Member Combs, and then I'm going to say a few things, and then we're going to have to end the meeting. Not to be disrespectful, but you very intelligent, informative ones, keep your answers brief, because I have to at least say something, a few questions. Notice I didn't say the board members. I get away with that. Okay. Member Combs.
Thank you so much, Kim Bays and your entire team. I think it's great. I really feel like we're heading in the right direction. I just have a couple of questions. When I see the behavioral incident, the trends, have we thought about breaking it down elementary, middle, and high school? Because I do think, we're absolutely not looking for tracking, but to look at the trends that are occurring with disobedience or disrespect, disruptive behavior, tardiness, looking at elementary, middle, and high school so we can distinguish those three?
Yes, there will be, going forward, there will be quarterly for each elementary, middle, and high.
Okay, as well as what about the goals for PBIS? I see with our transformation schools that 46% of those schools have been trained. Is there a goal or a timeline to get that to 100%, and what does that look like?
Yes, ma'am. There's actually a two-pronged approach. One, we have our traditional USF-trained PBIS schools, and they are continuing to get support through USF through that model. But we also are starting with all schools. We're starting with the school improvement plan that actually has an expectation for having a school-wide behavior plan. And so they will start with some of those expectations of what are those school-wide expectations as well as classroom expectations. And so until all 100% of our schools are formally trained, these are some of the supports that we're providing in the meantime.
Okay, and then my last comment, Baker Acts have been a huge issue in our district for quite a while, and I'm concerned as students return after more than a year that may have anxiety and they're transitioning back. Do we have a plan to kind of support those children as they transition back to schools?
Yes, through the mental health piece is going to be so impactful as we go back, and we realize that. So this summer we're doing actually a mental health institute for our student services staff that will take place in July to prepare them for what's to come, how to go back and train their staff at their school, signs and symptoms to look for. We have a great mental health team that can step in also with additional trainings. Our community partners are excellent. We've been working with them throughout the summer as we continue to refer students. This is ongoing, and we will be prepared as we go into the new school year.
Okay, thank you so much.
And Member Combs, I appreciate you being so brief. I'm just almost apologizing. I know we have so many questions. I just had two things real quick to ask, but you know what, Member Snively, why don't you go ahead and just point that out right now?
Sure. Just I wanted to just point something out on the matrix, page 32 and 33. I appreciate you putting vape products into the matrix. I'm wondering, I guess, because vape products is level 3 and tobacco is level 4, and the tobacco second incident is greater than the vape products second incident. So there's a little inconsistency in here, and I'm wondering if there's rationale behind that. Is that on purpose, or should they be even combined? Because vape products are tobacco products. They're e-cigarette product, are pretty much the tobacco products too. And the age on the tobacco is 21, but I believe it should be 18 instead of 21 now. So is there any rationale for that?
Not all the vape products are tobacco. We have been dealing with vape
nicotine.
More and some more, and we aren't quite sure what it is. We also have instances of other students disseminating and giving it to other students, and they end up in the hospital. So we didn't know what it was.
Could it be smoking products? Because they're all smoking products?
They're smoking products, they're inhaled, but there are drug enhanced as well. So we don't know what the quality is of it. So it's not always just tobacco. That's why it's a level higher than just the level 4.
Right. Now the tobacco has a 3 to 5 day OSS on the second incident, but the vape only has a 2 to 5 day on the second incident. Is that a typographical error?
No, it's not. It just depends. We have to take a look at exactly what it is. Some of these products that come in actually are the vape containers without anything in them, which is disruptive to the classroom anyway, but without the actual substance in it, it's not as severe as tobacco. And then on the other hand, sometimes the substance that is in the vape products in the containers is more harmful than the tobacco. So it's just really depends on what it is.
That's probably a whole nother conversation for
It
another day. But put that on the list, Ms. Gray, please, because that's another epidemic we need to really address if possible. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so 2 questions real quick. Number 1 question, and this is a comment, Member Washington, very much affiliated with school leadership. We are reminded that the tone of the school is reflective of the principal. That should resonate with each of us and every one of us throughout this whole topic. Second, Superintendent Davis, are we handling this full disclosure of code of conduct with the STAC, your teachers committee that you have formed?
Through the chair, Mrs. Bays and her team have interacted with many principals on the development of this. So as of right now, the Principal Advisory Committee has not at scale unpacked this and reviewed this, but many principals throughout the district, which we use for many different implementation plans, have reviewed and embedded this to be able to make proper changes to be able to move forward.
So the actual committee, I'm sorry,
Yes.
Ms. Bays?
Right. No, I was just going to say we also did training on the matrix with every single principal and assistant principal in December and January. So they've been aware that this has been coming, and we've had many of them volunteer to help in support of the committee.
Yeah, and I know you've done a very good job with the principals, with the PBIS and so forth, but not the STAC committee specifically.
Ma'am.
You're actually teacher committee.
No, ma'am. We have not had the STAC committee look at this.
And to Member Snively's point, the teacher is the critical part of the whole operation, day in and day out. So that is critical. And last, which is never true of me, but at any rate, the point of the PBIS, the Positive Behavior Incentive Support System from USF, I mean, we duplicated it, made it our own, so to speak. That needs to be covered with every board member, too. I know, Katrina, you put it in there. What is the actual name now that we have that's synonymous with the PBIS? Did you give it a name, a title?
Not necessarily a title, but we're calling it the school-wide behavior plan, and within that is going to be inclusive of many of the PBIS initiatives. So what we're trying to do is trying to piecemeal so that schools aren't being totally overwhelmed on the entire process, but try to roll it out in a way that can be handled by the schools. The high schools have an advantage because they also have the new position of the climate and culture resource teacher position, and that addition to that position they will be able to help with that implementation of the school-wide behavior plan.
Right, and that goes back to the teacher training, and we've been trying to get this all done with full fidelity, to use the word which is very operational. Full fidelity meaning every teacher, not just a few teachers. That needs to be done, and we've been trying that. That has been the game since 2016. But what I wanted to say is, why are we even mentioning the PBIS or the multi-facet system, the affective domain? Is because of this. We have access, and this goes to your point also with disproportionality, Member Perez, of suspension. We know point blank that when a school is full fidelity, and I'm including, Ross, the mentoring too, that goes in there, with PBIS, that's a model, it's a USF model, we're copying it, 10 points of it, that the following situations get lower. Number one, the COP, change of placement, goes lower, the amount of referrals goes lower, the amount of OSS goes lower, the amount of ISS goes lower, and two things go higher. We have a better attendance, we have better grades. That is statistically written in a form, at least it was, this was last year, I have copies of it for about 3 years, every school, every grade, to Nadia Combs' point, and every board member can have this. It has been shown that when it's full fidelity, a school will have those successes. So why I keep saying this is critical, and I know, Mr. McCauley, you're over this umbrella, because every one of these wonderful ones that are in front of me, and I'm sorry, I slept fine last night, but I'm still a little tired. I'm not going to go through all your names, but every one of you all who are experts, I have such respect for you, but do not ever think that this board does not pay attention to how that child feels, how that child, when they get to school, even before they get to school, what happens at home with trauma. Don't ever think that we're not paying attention to that. And to your point, Member Perez, yoga. So I want that emphasized. The effective, the COPs, the referrals, I think Member Hahn's been whispering, my view, disruption, and I know, Ms. Beige, you have an opinion, but when we have disruption and we don't pay attention to it, where there's smoke, there's fire. And any time a student disrupts class, and I'm talking even when they don't dress properly, when that child walks in the room and slams a book down or says the F word, that affects the entire class. That takes at least 5 to 10 minutes from instructional time. Every minute of instructional time, Rappreet, you know this, is huge and valuable to the longevity of the academic successes that we want. So what I'm saying, and I'm done talking, which no one ever believes anyway, but I'm going to conclude this meeting. We're going to go ahead, board members, you're going to give me, and I'll figure it out, you all tell me, 4 to 5 real concerns of yours, because most of you are very much educators and you're knowing very much what goes on in the classrooms, parents, and then you all are going to say, show what you're doing about it. And I think, and then the board members will give me more input, and so will Superintendent Davis, but I think we'll have that workshop, and I'm being told to, I'm getting the hook to stop talking.
No, I think, Madam Chair, it's important that because of the Sunshine Law, I think anything that board members want to send, they need to send to the superintendent, not through you, not to me, the superintendent, and then he'll funnel it too. So, but I think I want to protect the board and you, Madam Chair, from the perception of that. And the superintendent's very eager to have that communication, I think.
Okay, so Superintendent Davis, don't think you have Friday off, because now you've got more things to do. So at any rate, you're going to get a slew of that. I think I'm going to conclude, but I know Member Perez wants to say one more thing. I want to also thank every one of you for your judicious work and your passion. And I know every one of you, you work in 24/7, so thank you. Member Perez.
Yes, I just, we received an email yesterday on a marketing plan, And I just would like to see if we could just delay that until the next board meeting on the 29th of June. And I just also want to make a correction on that. Everybody keeps saying July 29th board meeting, but it's June 29th.
June 29th.
And just so that we could talk about that marketing plan.
Yes, ma'am. So the marketing plan I asked Tanya to share with the board just for review and feedback. The earlier we get out our plan about who we are, the sooner we can get students into our schools for enrollment to be able to talk about our program. So we'd love for the feedback. I would say by the mid or end of next week to be able to give some information from the board so that we can make sure we get it right. I think every day that we wait, maybe a potential day that a child connects or finds a registry with a different educational opportunity. But we're really ready to kind of move forward looking for your feedback if possible.
Okay, Member Perez, was that satisfactory? I see that, yes. Member Hahn will...
I just saw the email this morning, as a matter of fact, and I would agree. I'd like to at least have the opportunity. I'd like to pause the implementation. There's a large price tag associated. I think it would be unfair to the board if we didn't have an opportunity to discuss the plan as well as the cost with you and out of respect for our constituents. So if we could just delay the implementation until after the next board meeting so the board can have that discussion, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, board members. Thank you, wonderful staff. Thanks for everything that you do. And I guess we'll see each other at the Busch Gardens for the most part. Superintendent Davis, did you want to say anything?
No, we're good.
We're good?